Hello, and welcome to another Just Storytime. I am your host, Michael David Simmons. And without any delay, here is the story. There once were four individuals: Carol Round, Roe Washington, Dave Funn, and Michelle Anderson. They all graduated from the University of Utah with degrees in biology. They, receiving their doctorates, decided that after graduation they needed to go on a little adventure to celebrate, to commemorate, and to draw closer to one another. So they looked online and found island trips. A website boasted a trip to a remote island in the Pacific. So they decided to take this website up on their offer. They gathered gear and decided that they should embark on July 30th, 1997. They left California toward the remote island in the Pacific. They experienced a small swell, a little bit of a storm, just a tad bit of a storm, and eventually got to the island. When they got to the island, before the storm had reached them, the island received heavy rain. And there were all types of fish that had gathered near the island, beyond some of the coral shells, and resided in the warm waters near the beach of the island. Upon getting to the island, their salesman, the sailor, ship captain, and person that sold them on the trip, decided that he would go first onto the shore, and he took a rowboat and rowed ashore. Roe Washington wondered, why is this individual going first to check out what's going on? Shouldn't it be safe? Shouldn't it have already been checked out prior to them showing up? Shouldn't there be accommodations on the island? Well, honestly, there wasn't much on the island. The captain came back, /sailor /salesman, and he said, the island is safe. Let's go ahead and bring ashore what we have to stay with. So, Carol Round, Roe Washington, Dave Funn, and Michelle Anderson went onto the island. They, with their guide, took a trail from the island, venturing toward the center of the island. They had gone no more than 600 yards when they slowly began to realize, where we supposed to where are we supposed to stay? Where are we supposed to actually reside? Away from the elements, away from the animals, away from what might be inhabiting the island. That is when their guide said, we're going to go down this trail. And this trail, leading them to the left, ended up taking them somewhere where they really didn't need to go. The guide had forgotten that the actual living quarters were down to the right. Because what they had come to before they took the left was a fork in the trail. When they went left, they went downhill. And upon arriving at what they thought was the bottom of the hill, they soon were captured by aborigines. These aborigines seemed to be very hostile, very upsetting to the females, Carol and Michelle. The aborigines captured them, threw them into rope entanglements. Basically, they roped them up. They tied them up. These entanglements they led with other rope, and they led their prisoners back to their camp. When they got back to the aborigines' camp, they realized that they might actually be eaten, for these aborigines seemed to be cannibals. That is when Michelle and Carol became very upset. Roe and Dave didn't know what to do. How could they keep the females from being scared and worried about possibly dying? Roe decided he would try to talk down the aborigines. He began speaking, and they knocked him over the head with a club made of bone. Michelle began screaming wildly, and Carol started sobbing. Carol didn't know that the aborigines took pleasure in her crying. That only made them happy and more erratic. They danced around, screaming, whelping, hooping and hollering, until Dave. See, David had mannerisms. And these mannerisms that David had began to frighten the aborigines. David began praying to his God, and the aborigines did not know what to do. They heard words, and the words frightened them. The words that David spoke seemed to calm everyone that was conscious in his party. David continued to pray. Carol joined in. Michelle began to sing praises to David's God. All of a sudden, the Aborigines scattered, for they feared what was being spoken in David's tongue, and as well in the other members of the party. Roe was silent, for he was not conscious, and David continued with his conversation to his God. All of a sudden, Roe awakened. Roe awoke. Roe became awake. And David decided that he would free Roe. And so David used what he had with him to untie Roe. Dave loosed the bindings just a bit, and Roe broke free of the bondage in which he was encased. David was freed by Roe, and then they both set the females free. Carol Round sang praises of overwhelming joy, and Michelle exclaimed wildly, "David, surely your God has saved us, thanks to your wonderful prayer and the words you spoke." Those prayers brought us a sense of joy and an overwhelming sense of protection. About the time that all of this transpired, the Aborigines came back, for they were wondering why they were so frightened. And about that time, there began an interaction between the two parties. David spoke as best he could to convey the messages of peace, understanding, and why he did what he did. The Aborigines said to one another, "It is time for a hunt. We have gained some enlightenment from these individuals." So they did what they knew would bring them closer to this party from a distant land.